Okay, morning everybody. Morning to everybody in person and a big warm welcome to everybody who's also joining us online. First, Jacques from Inyatela is going to just do the brief housekeeping before we get going with the program.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. Hi there from my side. A warm welcome. Like I was introduced, my name is Jacques. I am the operations coordinator for Inyatelo, and I just want to take 2 minutes of your time just so that we can orientate ourselves. So the first thing and very important is when we are looking for the bathrooms, right? What we do is, the elevator you folks just came out of. If you look to your right-hand side, there is a set of lockers. In the middle of those lockers, there's a little passage that goes in. That is the space for the bathrooms. Okie dokie. Then also, you might see we've got these stands here that shows how to connect to the internet. We do have Wi-Fi. If you need to connect, please feel free to do so. Then also, please note this entire building is a smoke-free building. So if there are any smokers, we ask that you please go outside the building to smoke. Otherwise, security will ask you just to move to the outside. And then, lastly, I just want to talk about what happens in the case of an emergency. All right, so you will see me running down that passage, right? No, I'm kidding. We will have an alarm that goes off. Then our exit point is right over here. You see this passage here? We'll go down that passage, out the emergency door, and then we'll all get together on the outside, on the arch where we all came in this morning. We'll get together right outside that arch. And that, folks, is it from me. I hope you have a lovely visit. And if there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to give me a shout. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to kick off today's program with Professor Eric Atmore, who is the director of CECD, doing the welcome for us. Eric?
Good morning, everybody. Deputy Mayor, lovely to have you here. I want to explain a little bit about how we got to be here, and it's really a good news story. You know, in the Western Cape Premier and the Mayor, one Thursday every month, they meet with any citizen. So you can turn up, if you're early in the queue, get there at 4 o'clock, and you can speak to the Mayor, or you can speak to the Premier. And one of my colleagues, Sarah, who's here and is one of the co-authors of the publication, she went and met the Mayor with one task, to get an appointment with him, because the Premier and the Mayor only allocate 10 minutes per person. So all we wanted was to get a meeting, and the Mayor kindly agreed. Subsequent to that, we set up a task team. The Mayor set up a task team together with the Deputy Mayor, and that's been working phenomenally. It's a case study in global best practice in ECD. And in my fairly lengthy time in the sector, we've never, ever had it before. We subsequently met 15 times as a task team, and the Mayor brings heads of most departments around a table with the Deputy Mayor, and we talk ECD, which for me is phenomenal. And we need to write that story up as well, because that's a case study in best practice. Some of the achievements have been, we've managed to get around 2 million rand in various charges waived through the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. These are charges that ECD centers would otherwise have paid. 2 million sounds a little, but it's a lot of money when you look at the context. We've also seen lots of policy change and changes to the processes and the regulations. And that only comes about when there's communication between the sector and the decision makers. So with that as a short background, I want to thank the three authors, Jessica Blom, Yusra Ehrenreich, and Sarah Atmore, who happens to be my daughter, but we won't talk about that. The Deputy Mayor knows what she's like. But really, the three of them have driven this project. And our goal now is to take it to the other 256 municipalities around the country. We've had some approaches from Gauteng and from KwaZulu-Natal. We're working with the Saldanha Bay municipality as well. So we've, Deputy Mayor, you and Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis have set something in motion, which I think the ECD sector is very, very grateful for. Thank you very much. And welcome. Listen to the presentations. There's coffee and there's a light lunch afterwards. And please, let's mingle. I believe we've got almost 100 people online watching. And let's make it a glorious day, because this is a case study of best practice. And Deputy Mayor, thank you for all your contribution.
Okay, thanks, Eric. I think just to say a warm welcome to everybody again, and especially to the Deputy Mayor for being here and for supporting the event. We really do appreciate it. I realize I did not introduce myself. My name is Jessica and I work for the Center for Early Childhood Development. And so welcome to today's launch of our learning brief, an advocacy call addressing local government barriers for ECD centers. And we are extremely proud to be able to launch this today and to share it with all of you. It has been a huge amount of work, I think 4 years worth of work. And so we're very proud of what we've achieved so far. Just some very brief housekeeping. It is online and a virtual event. So please just be aware we're streaming from that camera over there. So don't stand in front of it, please, and try not to knock it over. So just be aware that that's where we're streaming from. For everybody who's here in person, you should all have received your hard copy of the learning brief. If you haven't, you can go and get it from Timbisa and Boniso at the registration table. For all of you who are watching online, my colleague Zena will put the link to the learning brief in the comments for you, so you can go on and have a look at the actual document while we're going through it. And then just very briefly, the program for the day. So Eric has done the welcome, Jacques did the housekeeping for us, thank you, Jacques. And then Yusra Ehrenreich will be doing the presentation on the actual work. So as Eric alluded to, some of the story, the journey, and then some of the achievements and successes thus far. And then we're very lucky to have the Deputy Mayor here to do some remarks on the work of the ECD task team. We will then do Q&A, and after that we'll have the thanks and the closing. And as Eric said, there's some light lunches afterwards. It is quite a full program, so just bear with us. But we're going to start off with Yusra Ehrenreich, if she can come to the floor. Intro. Yeah. Just a very, very brief intro. For those of you who don't know, Yusra is the manager of CECD's Advocacy, Social Justice and Advocacy Unit, and we're incredibly lucky to have her. She brings this amazing combination of legal dedication, passion to all of her work that she does, and particularly this work around local government. She's able to take complex legal frameworks and translate them into meaningful change, while at the same time holding steadfast to her values of advocacy and social justice. Yusra and the rest of the team have worked incredibly hard, and so she's going to go through all the detail with you now.
Good morning, everyone. Molweni kuni nonke. Assalamu alaikum. Goeiemorgen. I am so excited to be launching our learning brief today, which is really around addressing local government barriers that ECD centers face across South Africa. So thank you so much for joining us today in person and online. I really hope today is a beneficial day for everyone. So, as you may know, many ECD centers across South Africa face significant barriers to full registration as well as municipal compliance, because the municipal compliances are often very complicated, they're expensive, they take an incredibly long time. It's difficult for ECD Centre principals to navigate the world of local government approvals and compliances. And so what we're finding is because ECD centres are not able to comply with the municipalities, they cannot reach the relevant appropriate level of registration, which is silver or gold level registration, to then access the subsidy. So in response to this, the Centre for Early Childhood Development's Advocacy and Social Justice Unit decided to launch a targeted initiative, starting with the City of Cape Town, to look at those key barriers in the regulations, finances, processes that are preventing centres from getting those compliances in place. And like I said, those barriers need to be removed so that ECD centres can reach a level of registration where they can access the subsidy. And it also ensures that the environment in which children are in, it's safe and it's in a healthy environment. You know, now more than anything, this really is crucial, particularly what's happening in our country, the focus on ECD from the Department of Basic Education, which is incredible. We need to harness this to make the change, because right now we have a Department of Basic Education that has funds, but the funds are not flowing to the children. And that is an indictment on children's rights. We cannot have funds available that do not go to provide children with nutrition, that do not go to our ECD workers' salaries, because systems are put in place that prevent the funds to flow, the very systems that adults create. And we are here to say that we create systems, and so we can change systems. And I really hope that today inspires people, that you learn from what's happening with the City of Cape Town, so that systems can be transformed to really improve the lives of children and our ECD workers on the ground. Next slide, please, Claire. Okay, so before delving into how the ECD task team was established and looking at the progress that's been achieved, I thought there would be value in explaining very briefly what ECD Centre registration is and municipal compliance in the City of Cape Town specifically. So according to the Children's Act, all ECD centres that care for 7 or more children are required to register with the Provincial Department of Education. And to do so, ECD centres must meet the prescribed national norms and standards. Then, in addition to that, ECD centres must comply with various requirements that the municipality sets out in which the ECD centre is located. In the City of Cape Town, ECD centres must complete 4 steps of municipal approvals and compliances. The first one being that an ECD centre must be properly zoned to operate an ECD centre or get that land use approval from the City of Cape Town. And it is important to note that without land use approval, the other city departments won't issue their municipal requirements and clearances. The next step, once the ECD centre has their land use approval in place, they need to get their building plan approval. Thereafter, they need to obtain their fire clearance, and lastly, their health clearance certificate. So as you can see, even when you have national regulations changing or the regulatory framework being revised and reformed, which is what we are seeing with the Bana Pele ECD registration drive or the mass registration drive, ECD centres must still comply with the requirements of their municipality. And that often presents the most immediate context-specific issues. So it's possible for an ECD centre to be registered with the Provincial Department of Education, but because they don't meet their municipality's requirements, they're still operating illegally and can be at risk of closing. So we can't separate the two. And it shows the pivotal role that local government plays as a stakeholder to either obstructing or providing access to quality ECD services. So in terms of how did this task team even begin, Eric Ackmore alluded to when we approached the executive mayor of Cape Town, but I wanted to take you a few years prior to that. We started by visiting ECD forums, and that was incredibly important. In our advocacy and social justice unit, we have a remarkable young lady, Miss Amanda Imbali. She is our community engagement activist, and she is hiding, so I can't see her. There she is over there. She really is incredible, and her sole job is to visit ECD forums, where they are, where they exist across the city of Cape Town, across the Western Province. And at these forums, she was supposed to gather information on what are centers really struggling with. What are their issues? We weren't even thinking registration. We were just thinking, if we want to be a responsive advocacy and social justice unit, we need to hear the issues as they come up constantly. So weekly, she'll go to forums across the city of Cape Town. And across all these diverse communities and contexts, one issue became very clear. It was registration, because centers couldn't meet the municipal requirements. So then we knew this was something we needed to focus on as a advocacy and social justice unit. Then at the same time, Claire, next slide. That's Amanda visiting an ECD forum. The next one, Claire. The unit then, it's one before this, sorry, Claire. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties with our clicker, so maybe we'll just go straight to the laptop. Okay, so then the unit started taking on walk-in cases. And this really was crucial, because what landed up happening is we could help individual centers on a case-by-case basis, and our walk-in cases are here with us today, where we could ask them, what is your specific issue and how can we assist? So we would then apply for various consent use applications or appeals or exemptions from charges that we found unreasonable or unrealistic to assist that direct ECD center. And as we started to assist the ECD centers, we realized it's actually a systems issue, and we couldn't continue helping individual centers on a case-by-case basis. It just was not sustainable. As Eric Ackmore mentioned in the welcome, since 2020, when we helped various centers, we managed to remove charges and penalties amounting to around 1.8 million, soon to be 2 million after another approval, which showed that it's possible to find relief, but we need to change the system instead. That really led us to approaching the executive mayor of Cape Town by our infrastructure manager, Sarah Ackmore, at the First Thursday initiative. And next slide, please, Claire. We've been asked, how do you secure a meeting with a mayor, right? We got lucky that we went to a open government sort of opportunity where you can speak honestly with government. In the learning brief, we have outlined suggested ways of connecting with the mayor in a municipality. But I think something I would like to focus on this point, which is a key learning that we figured out, is how do you not only meet the mayor of Cape Town, but create the sustainable engagement? And the biggest thing for us was to have a compelling case. And we really did that by saying, Executive Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, according to the ECD Census 2021, there are 2,620 ECD centers. Yes, Deputy Mayor, in the city of Cape Town. Wonderful. How wonderful that our Deputy Mayor knows how many centers are in our municipality. And at least 1,964 of those ECD centers are not fully registered with the Provincial Department of Education. So what this means for the city is approximately 58,000 young children are in environments that you can't guarantee are safe. They can't access nutrition through the subsidy, and that is in your municipality. So they're not complying with the municipality's rules and regulations, regardless of the education department's rules and regulations. So it's really about making it clear to the municipality why it matters for the municipality. We then detailed the municipal process through all the different stages. And under every stage, we brought up every and all barrier we have ever heard of from an ECD center, detailing why it wasn't possible, and importantly, suggested possible solutions. This sort of became a table and an action plan to then say, all right, let's address all the regulatory, financial, administrative barriers that's in the city's control to unlock the potential and create a enabling supportive environment for ECD centers in the city. Next slide, Claire. So okay, that slide, yes. Okay, so then what landed up happening, we suggested having an ECD task team, which really is remarkable. It is led by the mayor and the deputy mayor. And as Eric alluded to earlier, the task team structure and our strategy has made the difference. So the actual task team comprises of senior officials in all the relevant departments that ECD centers interact with along the entire municipal compliance process. So we have actually in the house today, good old Gregory from Land Use Management. We have the Building Development Management. We have fire, health, property transactions, because centers are also on city-owned land. Where need be, we have energy, anything related to funds. So we have the right people in the task team. And that's important to make sure all those departments are in the same task team. It was crucial to get everyone in the same room because they could then collectively see the issues, the issues that centers experience. Because before they were only looking at their department, and rightfully so, that is their responsibility, but they could start seeing the knock-on effects and the collective issues arising from previous stages of the compliance. What we decided to do was to develop work streams. So like I said, when we initially, managed to put a compelling case together, we mentioned the issues. And so every issue has a work stream. And I can tell you these people work. That's why it's called a work stream. So they work incredibly hard to really make progress in the work stream. And then the best part about it is every 2 to 3 months, the ECD task team has to meet with the mayor and the deputy mayor to give progress on that work stream. And that really pushes accountability, it pushes progress, it gives urgency. 2 to 3 months is pretty remarkable to get political leadership in a room with all those people. And on top of that, it's not only the mayor, the deputy mayor, it's also the mayoral committee members of those departments. So you've got Councillor Hyam, who is the MACO member of Community Arts and Culture Development. So that's very good to make sure everyone knows what's happening. Beyond that, as we said initially, we want centers to ultimately register and access funds. So we also have the Western Cape Education Department, Ms. Lucas, at those progress meetings. So she can see what are the changes happening at a municipal level and will it ultimately feed into registration at a level to get government funding. It is very well thought out. We make changes as the need arises. We initially didn't ever think this was possible. We really started with a small team of 20. And the other day I had a look at, how many people have we interacted in our biggest meeting, and there were over 90 city officials that get invited to these meetings. So it's a massive task team within the city of Cape Town, which is really incredible. I wanted to also talk about the importance of a social partner. So I've now spoken about this task team definitely needing different local government departments, political leadership, the education department. But you do need a social partner that is embedded within the community and that understands the issues on the ground. And that's very much what CECD represents, as well as Ikamva Labantu, who has joined us as a social partner on the ECD task team for their incredible expertise in ECD center registration and informal settlements. So we needed the right players in the room to make sure that any changes are responsive to the needs on the ground. Then, as suggested by the executive mayor, which was a great suggestion, he said, why don't you have trial centers? So we have 14 trial centers in informal and formal areas that will test the solutions before citywide implementation. And that's important because we learned through the testing and will be able to iron out any issues before you actually, change the laws or ensure that the big systems change. And then in terms of the strategy, as I said, the task team has decided to follow a step-by-step process, the very same process the ECD Centre follows to become compliant. So the first stage we've been focusing on is the land use approval stage, because it is the first stage and the most complicated and costly and long stage. So you will see that a lot of our progress or work is done around this stage. Before moving on to the progress and the achievements or the work that's been done, I wanted to highlight 3 learnings when working with municipalities. And like I said briefly, really the role of a dedicated social partner that doesn't only propose solutions, but walks alongside a municipality every single step of the way to constantly make sure that what's being done will translate to effective change on the ground. And importantly, to be able to inform communities because they've got that connection on the ground. They can get information from the sector that needs to be fed into government. And that's a very important loop to be led by communities and to make sure you benefit communities at the end of the day. The next thing, which I hadn't thought of before our Deputy Director, Jessica Blom, raised, was really the importance of having a legal mindset within the civil society organization. Because at the end of the day, municipalities, governments, they're creatures of statute, right? Their functions, their powers, their duties, their mandates, what they can and can't do, it all comes down to laws, regulations, and policies. And so what you need is, you do need someone in the civil society partnership that understands the law. Because in government, you'll have your legal advisors, who are incredible, and you'll have your state attorneys, but you do need to sometimes have the law be seen in a different way, and so that you can read the law and make sure it is going to make the change that's being proposed, because you understand how the law is read. So if there's anything that is required, please get yourself a legal eagle. And then, like I said, which really is why we're also so happy that the Deputy Mayor is here today, is political buy-in. Because like all government institutions, there are competing priorities. What do you focus on? What do you do next? And if you don't have that political accountability, knowing I'm going to have to report to political leadership, I have to make sure I do this work. It's easy to get lost in everything else that you must understandably do. So having that buy-in, it really is remarkable. Right, so as I said, we focused on land use as the first step in municipal compliance. And I think there's value in explaining what exactly is land use in the city of Cape Town. So there's more detail on this in the learning brief itself, but to provide some context and understanding, land use means it's sort of the purpose for which your land can be used. So every property in the city of Cape Town can perform certain activities on your property. Every landowner can do certain things on their property. And that is determined by zoning, which is set out by the city of Cape Town. So is it residential? Is it community use? Is it local business? Or if it's not in your zoning, you must get approval from the city to perform that activity on your property, right? So an ECD center, they must be located on property, zoned to allow for a place of education at a preschool level. And in terms of the law, that's called a place of instruction, or it can say any educational purpose, and they must meet those conditions. Otherwise, they need to obtain approval from the city to operate the ECD center on that property. And this is typically seen as a consent use application. And where you cannot submit a consent use application because it's not permissible, that is when you'd submit a rezoning application. In the learning brief, I must say we highlight key achievements in detail. So I'll go through these briefly, but with sufficient information, I hope. It just really is important to note at the outset that we are not done. as an ECD task team. You know, there is significant progress, but there's a considerable amount of work that must still take place, particularly for ECD centers in informal areas. We are fully aware of this, and this is our focus as an ECD task team. I just don't want that to be missed when seeing all the other progress. We are still going. So I'm going to try talk through some of the progress with examples to position it better. So our very first walk-in case was Blessed Anna Marie's Educare and Aftercare, an ECD center based in Kales River, set up by Principal Anna Marie and her pastor Rodney. Like many ECD centers, there was a need in the community, and so she opened up a center at her home. She has 66 children and roughly 6 staff members. And when she approached us, we found out that she did not have a land use permission in place. Like I said, there was a need in the community, and so she opened up her center to keep children safe and to care for them and to stimulate them and feed them, but without asking the city for permission to operate the ECD center on her property. So she then received a compliance notice, right? And that is simply the city saying you are breaking the municipal planning bylaw because you don't have permission to operate your ECD center. So please close and comply with the bylaw within 2 months, or failing which you could be liable to a fine of 800,000 Rand, or imprisonment not exceeding 20 years, or both a fine and imprisonment. So that is an incredibly scary thing for an ECD center principal to receive, right? But what it is it's technically, you are breaking a law and it's a consequence for breaking the law. But what we realized is the imposition of this notice of closure is dire on ECD centers. And we put forward a case to say, you know, we cannot afford to have ECD centers being closed in the city of Cape Town. Where do the children go? It's not a business that can easily open up and close. You know, children develop relationships with teachers. The parents have to go to work. And so we can't have a situation where centers are being closed down because they can't meet the municipal requirement to get land use approval, when there's an acknowledgement that the land use approval process itself is difficult and complicated and too long to achieve and get. We also cannot have principals being criminalized. That was another concern of ours. So she was facing criminal charges. She was obviously found guilty and paid an admission of guilt fine. But following our engagement with the city, they started realizing, you know, the implications of ECD centers with this notice of closure, because it's a massive bylaw. It's hundreds of pages with consequences for breaking various parts of the bylaw. But this implication on an ECD center is far too dire. And we are very happy and proud that they, you know, have indicated they will no longer be issuing these notices to close unless, of course, there's a health and safety risk for children. You know, children's health and safety cannot be compromised. So that was a major win. We needed to make sure that the enforcement mechanism attached to the municipal planning bylaw wasn't being triggered, knowing that the reason centers don't have their land use approval is because there's a systemic issue. We then looked at expanding the city's map of exempted areas. And this was very exciting work and really speaks to the importance of evidence and research. Our head researcher, Michaela Ashley Cooper, is phenomenal and worked with the City of Cape Town's researcher to really better identify vulnerable communities in the City of Cape Town. And this really was an involved, comprehensive task where they looked at the median monthly household income per suburb according to the South African census data. And they went beyond income. They went to the city's social vulnerability index. So it looks at other factors that make you vulnerable. What are your vulnerable conditions? Do you have personal mobility? What is your household like? Is it child-hated? So really a broad range of vulnerability to create this map of exempted areas. And council happily adopted this map, which strengthens the city's ability to really target and support centers where it's most needed. Just as a data statistic, the actual map itself supports at least 1,562 centers, which reaches over 58,000 children and more than 7,000 staff members. So after creating this map, which categorized vulnerable communities accurately, we then tackled the administrative penalty barrier, right? And just to say, the admin penalty fee, that is a fee that an ECD center must pay because they have been operating illegally, so they don't have their land use approval in place, or they have done building work without an approved building plan in place. So it's a consequence for breaking the law. You have a penalty to pay. And what we found when working with Legos Daycare, that this admin penalty, it came as a shock because they went to try to get compliant. So saying we would like to apply for land use approval. And in the process, the city found out that they did not have land use approval in place. And so asked them to apply for an admin penalty because they were operating illegally. So many centers can't pay the actual admin penalty fee. We've seen it range up unto 40,000 Rand. And the other thing, it discourages centers from becoming compliant because you're kind of, pointing out that you haven't been operating legally. And we couldn't have that be the case. And we then sort of spoke to the city of Cape Town, who understood it exactly at that. They realized that this admin penalty, it didn't serve a purpose, as in the cost didn't go towards some municipal service. It was a penalty for breaking the law. It's a deterrent to break law. It's a consequence to break law. And so the city approved an exemption from this admin penalty for ECD centers in government subsidized housing developments, informal settlements, and that map of exempted areas that I spoke about. And they did this very easily. So we're very happy about that. What we did find is we wanted to make, the change in law practical on the ground. So with the city of Cape Town, with Gregory, a online map was developed. So ECD centers themselves can put in the address of their center and see, am I exempt from this admin penalty? So that they know their rights. They know they're not going to be hit with an admin penalty. They can go to the land use application stage and not worry about that. And that's very important in terms of empowering centers to know their rights and to know what they can and can't do. We must also note that not all areas are in this map of exempted areas. It focuses on vulnerable communities. So there are affluent or more well-off areas that are not in this exempt area. And we were trying to think, what do we do for those ECD centers? So our infrastructure manager, Sarah Atmo, together with Gregory, co-developed a template motivation letter, which those ECD centers can use if they are not in the exempt area to ask for a reduced admin penalty fee or for a 0 Rand admin penalty fee. Because we realize some areas are mixed. We couldn't accommodate all areas in this map. So you'll have a mixed area, and then those areas can say, but our fees are this, or the children we serve are those children, to still be able to benefit from this relief. So, this is probably my most proud achievement to date with the ECD task team, with the mayor, with the deputy mayor, with Gregory and Sarah. It's that the city approved amendments to the municipal planning bylaw, which is like out of my wildest dreams that this could even happen. And it's remarkable that you got it over the line, deputy mayor and the mayor. But essentially what it means is, you can ignore all the other issues I raised before this, because what you're saying is we're going to change the zonings of certain zoning categories to allow centers to operate without having to go to the city to even get that land use approval. So you change the actual planning bylaw to say, don't worry, you can operate on your property. You don't have to go get approval from the city. In fact, you can immediately move on to the next stage of municipal compliance, which is getting your approved building plan in place. And I think there's value in mentioning which zonings those are so people know, and you can also read more about it. The first one we looked at was residential zoning 1. Previously, it was called SR1. And essentially, that was allowing small-scale ECD centers, which in the city of Cape Town's perspective, that's 34 or fewer children, they are permitted to operate in a R1 zone without needing to apply for land use approval, and there are certain conditions that must be met. So an example is you need to have, a maximum of 3 employees on the property. You need to also, there must be a residential purpose of sorts on the property as well. And we do acknowledge that there could still be some of those conditions that prevent small-scale ECD centres from fully benefiting. And so we continue to work with the City of Cape Town and engage around that. We then saw relief in group housing, or GR1, which is essentially that the same relief is granted to the R1 zoning. So if you meet the same conditions and you're actually in GR1 or group housing, which you don't need to then go get approval from the City of Cape Town to operate your ECD centre, you can operate on your property as is. The biggest reform we saw was in residential zoning too, and that's incremental housing in the City of Cape Town. This zoning, it facilitates upgrading and incremental housing from an informal settlement to a formal settlement. And here, you're permitted to operate in an R2 zone regardless of the number of children. So that's massive. You can be as big as you want to be. And if you're in an R2 zone, you can operate your ECD centre without needing to apply for land use approval. There are other conditions, but none of the conditions are related to number of employees or number of staff members. And that really is massive. It is permissible in both a formal township and if a formal township doesn't exist yet. So it's quite far-reaching and incredible. So as I said earlier, there is still so much work to be done, particularly for ECD centres in informal settlements. What we found when working with the City of Cape Town, there wasn't a clear pathway for ECD centres in informal settlements to get their land use approval in place. Through one of our trial centres, we were able to obtain land use approval in the form of a temporary land use departure to permit a place of instruction on a portion of the earth. But we are still trying to trial other ways, before rolling out that way so that we know it is a fair and just system. And trust me, we are working tirelessly on this. All right, I have 2 more achievements I'm going to go through. In terms of addressing development charges, I thought I'd introduce it by way of example. So Wonderland Kids Academy, with Anika was in the house today. She is an ECD centre operating Grassy Park with roughly 88 children. And she received a development charge of 323,000 Rand. The largest development charge we have had sight of was an ECD centre in Khayelitsha, which was over 1 million Rand. So this is by far the biggest charge and cost imposed on an ECD centre in terms of their municipal compliance related to land use and development. So as you can see here, another example was Ubukabake Educare Centre. She has 253 children and 16 staff members in Khayelitsha, and her development charge was almost 800,000 Rand. So these charges are massive and impossible for ECD centres to pay. It's very clear that we know this is not possible. And when working with the City of Cape Town, we started to understand what are development charges, what is the city needed for, why are they so high? And development charges are once-off charges imposed by the city on landowners, so ECD centre principals, to cover the cost of municipal engineering services that's required for the additional pressure and demand put on the city's bulk infrastructure to that property, right? So that's to cover roads, sewage, stormwater, and solid waste, etc. So in fact, it's the city somewhat seeing it as a fair policy because it's saying your property originally only housed a family. You now house 253 children. It's putting additional pressure on our system. You need to pay a contribution towards that pressure so we can upgrade the system to ensure that our systems and infrastructure work. So we understood why it was needed, but we maintained that ECD centers still can't pay this amount, even though it's crucial because we also need infrastructure and systems to work from a municipality point of view. And what we landed up doing was putting in multiple appeals. So you can always appeal a condition to land use approvals. And then we also tried some of the exemptions which the city already had in place. So when we spoke to the City of Cape Town, they alerted us to the fact that there actually is a development charge exemption available for ECD centers in the City of Cape Town, and it had been established in 2020. Remember, we only met with them in 2022. So they had already identified a development charge as a massive hurdle that centers can't pay. So they have and had an automatic exemption for ECD centers with 34 and less children. So essentially, small-scale ECD centers would never be imposed this development charge. For larger scales, they said you had to apply for the exemption, and they created a fund that would pay that development charge on your behalf just to ensure that the city services still work. So that was all fair and well, and that made sense. But what we found was that fund wasn't being utilized, and it wasn't for lack of people having development charges imposed or this idea that maybe centers could pay for it. But the actual criteria to apply for that development charge was restrictive and quite limiting and didn't speak to the realities of a center on the ground. So our main thing was to work with the city with what they have and broaden that criteria, right? So before you had to be an MPO to apply, that got scrapped. You had to be a standalone ECD center. So you couldn't live on the property, you couldn't be part of a church or community hall. That condition was removed, or that criteria was removed. You needed to prove that the parents of your children earned a joint income of 15,000 Rand or less, and that was really difficult for principals to obtain from parents, and that requirement also got removed. So we are very proud that in December last year, the new criteria to allow for more ECD centers with 35 or more children to apply for this exemption got approved, and the city is rolling that out very well. Another thing around development charges, because we had put in sufficient exemptions to test the system could also be streamlined. So it went from, processing a development charge in potentially 11 months to 3 months. And that's what happens when we worked with the CECD department to be like, how do we make this quicker? Because if the development charge isn't paid, it holds up your land use approval since it's a condition to your land use approval, and you can't move on to your building plan approval stage. I wanted to make another mention on what we learned during this work stream, and maybe I'm giving away our strategy to municipalities. But essentially, what was happening is we decided to flood the system. We were like, there's a system in place. Let's flood it with as many appeals and exemptions as possible so that the system can realize something must change. And so that's what we did. We put in many appeals to a point where the executive mayor who finalized those appeals, he decides on the appeal, said, you have to sort out the exemption process. And that really drove us to then changing and broadening that criteria. Another thing to note with the development charges as opposed to the admin penalty is always understanding why municipalities need revenue or money for what purpose. So we knew it couldn't just be waived or money foregone. We need the money to upgrade infrastructure. So it was so critical that there is this fund that exists within the City of Cape Town, which they have been increasing on their own accord, which is absolutely incredible, to pay these development charges on behalf of ECD centers. And then the last achievement I'll be talking about, and one of many work streams, is with our walk-in cases, it was revealed that ECD centers, as small as 10 children, 15 children, they were required to convert to a commercial electricity tariff. And then they could also be asked to pay a shared network charge, which is the development charge equivalent of electricity. And when working with our centers, we supported around 7 ECD centers to appeal this land use condition of converting to a commercial electricity user and potentially paying that shared network charge. And what we found through the appeal process and the decisions was that an electricity condition can't actually be attached to a land use approval or building plan submission. And that was major because it shows that the land use approval can't be slowed down because of an electricity condition, and neither can the building plan submission. And to remove that and unblock that because it was an incorrect use of imposing the electricity condition at that point was a good find, which sort of allowed us to remove a blocker. Even more excitingly, what happened is the energy direction at the City of Cape Town is now studying actual consumption of electricity at ECD centers. They have 16 centers on the trial, and they are looking at, what is the pattern of consumption at ECD centers so that any tariff can actually be evidence-based. So to end off, we truly believe that the work with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, City of Cape Town, it offers a model for addressing municipal barriers to ECD center compliance across other municipalities in South Africa. And we believe this work can be scaled. We believe it can be adapted and modified so that it can work in other municipalities. And that's really why we're here today. We're here to share the learnings, give insight, inspire and encourage collaboration and more work, because this really is necessary. In the learning brief, we put forward ways in which this can be done. Bearing in mind, this is only one way. There are other organizations working incredibly well with municipalities. But we wanted to make sure that we said, we need to be careful when we expand to other municipalities. There are 257 municipalities in South Africa. They have different contexts. They have different geographies, and municipalities are best placed to write the laws for the context of that municipality. So we cannot just blanketly take learnings and exemptions or change in bylaws from the City of Cape Town and apply it to another municipality. It needs to be applied where similar issues exist. Otherwise, we could land up overcomplicating another municipality in terms of their land use approval, particularly if you're thinking of more rural areas or tribal land. So it's about understanding what's happening in that municipality, and we caution against taking learnings and just applying it without giving that thought or that adaptation. The other thing, which is critically important, is the presence of a nonprofit organization, civil society organization within that municipality that has the understanding and deep knowledge of the centers in that municipality. The only reason this worked with CECD as the Advocacy and Social Justice Unit is because we are in an organization that has been operating for over 30 years. So we know the issues that have been existing for decades. And you need a ECD MPO who understands the issues, that can communicate with the sector to get the information and give that feedback loop, and to make sure that whatever changes happen, it's actually happening on the ground. Because your civil society organization becomes the watchdog, so do your centers, to say, you said that change is happening, but it's not flowing through, or it needs to be shifted in this way. So you're constantly going back because you're connected to the ground. And that is why governments partner with civil society organizations, is because you say we're rooted in the communities. So to find that partner is very important. The other thing, which I have mentioned before, which is also understanding the technicalities around municipalities. How do municipalities work? What are the actual processes? Reading the laws, understanding the laws, so that change is sustainable and effective. When we, with working with the City of Cape Town, it's organically happened, and it really is something we are incredibly proud of, that we have prioritized ECD within the city's machine and system. So it's not a separate sort of framework or process or regulation. It's embedded within the different departments' bylaws. And so what happens is it becomes sustainable when we one day walk away. And that's really important. You need long-lasting change. And something which hit me this morning when talking to Tatiana, actually, was she was talking about how the city of Cape Town has been communicating to the ECD sector and their use of words, talking about pathways to compliance and how they speak to the sector. And it hit me that probably the biggest change is changing people's mindsets. So we have actually shifted how people think about young children. And that is the and that is the game changer. You know, we have champions in the city of Cape Town. I mean, really, Charles Rudman, if there ever was a man who can move mountains in one municipality, in every department, anytime, any day, he will make it happen. We have Gregory Obert with us. We have Deputy Mayor Eddie Andrews. And it just gives me so much hope. Because before, it's easy to judge government when you don't know what's happening inside of government. And working with these individuals, it makes you realize sometimes they need knowledge to know what to do because they do care. And they will find loopholes for you, I can tell you now. You think you're gonna go one way and we're gonna find some fine print in some policy or some loophole in some subsection of some bylaw, and change can happen. And so I'm really, honored and proud to presenting this work. I'm honored to be working with everyone, on this work. And my hope is that, like I said, we inspire people. We roll this out beyond the city of Cape Town. And if I can really just leave with these parting words is that, this work is urgent. And it cannot wait. Children are born with rights, and we create systems that undermine their rights. And that needs to change. Thank you very much.
And now you can all see the passion and the dedication, and we're incredibly lucky to have her. Deputy Mayor, hard act to follow, I will say. But next up, we will have Deputy Mayor Andrews talking to us about the City of Cape Town's perspective on the work of the ECD task team, as well as what it was like to collaborate and work with CECD throughout this journey. Deputy Mayor Andrews, over to you.
It is indeed a hard act to follow, and I think I should start by saying thank you, Professor Atmore, to Sarah, Jessica, Yushra, and Amanda. Thank you for the work. Thank you for pushing. Thank you for faithfully attending those engagements and not accepting that no is not an answer. I think that really is something that is that's one of the lessons that I've learned as being part of this conversation. But if pushing the envelope was in human form, then Charles Rudman must certainly needs to get again a special mention. And I remember when I joined council about 15 years ago, I was out in Mitchell's Plain. I was a sub-council chairperson, and we had the issue about tuck shops. And I said to Charles, how do we assist the sector with compliance? And what can we do? And true to form, I did not know Charles that intimately. He took his team and did a complete assessment. And I think they came with the report, just over 400 tuck shops in the sub-council. Told us exactly how many of them are compliant, how many of them are not compliant, and what must be done to ensure that they are compliant. And just to close the circle this morning, I was in Cape Talk talking about tuck shops again, in that it's an important sector, as this one is, and I'll get to my remarks in a moment, because people's livelihoods depend on it.
We don't want to, and you use the word Yushra, we don't want to feel people feel that they are criminalized when they receive that notice. And I was asked about that notice this morning. And I said to Lester Kiewicz, the reality is, lawfully we are required to specify that it's up to 800,000, up to 20 years, but it scares people. It absolutely scares people. And last night, just after 11, I penned an email to my team. And I said to them, there's a quote by John Maxwell that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so we must respond as a regulator legally, but please also do so in a caring manner, and let there be empathy in your response as well, because the poor operator is suffering like, I'm not going to comply now, I don't want to go to prison. And this guy went on radio saying, are you wanting to imprison me because I'm selling bread and consumables that is required in the community? I said, no, we don't want to. But as you rightly mentioned as well, we also need to respect the rule of law. And so if you're not aware of the application process, how do we help you? How do we ensure that you are a lot more mindful of the processes and that you are compliant? Because those inspections are important. We understand what has happened previously when it comes to food and food that's been contaminated and you purchasing those expired foods. It is of concern, and I accept in some communities, I often hear the phrase, an expiry date is merely a suggestion. But we understand the context as well. So just some context, and the reason why I'm a strong supporter of the task team and why I allocate an enormous amount of time, because as you know, and most of you don't know, my wife and I had an educare as far back as 2007, so we understand the struggles. And it's invaluable that you have, and I know not all of them are here today, that you have Gregory here, you have some of the other colleagues from the task team that are here, and that were instrumental in finding those loopholes. But it's always meaningful to be in the room with people who are not only speaking about the future of children, but most certainly we are actively shaping it. ECD is one of those areas of public life where the stakes are incredibly high, but the work is deeply practical. It is about a child having a safe place to learn. It is about the practitioner being able to operate with dignity. It is about a parent knowing that when they leave their child in someone else's care, that the child is protected, that the child is stimulated, but most importantly, that the child is loved. Because it is also about systems, but it is about whether those systems of government make that work easier and not harder. And so that is why today matters. That is why the learning brief, and I, of course, had not seen the document yet, so I don't know what was to come. So I am here in faith, and I know, of course, what lives in the actual document. But that's why the learning brief matters, because it takes a lived experience, practical frustration, evidence and advocacy, and turns it into shared learnings. And it essentially gives us a mirror to reflect and say, are we on the right track? And it says that these are the barriers, these are the patterns we've spoken about early on, but most importantly, these are the opportunities that we can actually consider. And for that, I want to thank CECD for the work that you've been doing, not just in part of the task team, but also long before that. Because you have chosen to engage government firmly, you have chosen to engage government constructively, but most importantly, you've chosen to engage government with solutions on the table. I think that's a very important point as well, because if we are honest, many of the ECD centers have carried an impossible burden for too long. I remember Lagos Educare when we were at your 30th celebrations, and I was approached. So, where are you? There we go. And with tears streaming down her cheeks, I'm like, geez, what did I do now today? And sharing me saying, thank you for this fund that you're now able to, we could make an application to. If I recall correctly, it was just approximately 180,000 Rand. And we don't want you to suffer in silence, not at all, because we know that you are expected to comply, but often face a system that is complex expensive, and difficult to navigate. And also because we know that you are expected to formalize, but the pathway to that formalization has not always been clear. We also know that you're expected to meet standards, but the support to reach those standards has often been fragmented, and Yushra also spoke about that early on. So when that happens, and when people who suffer, it is of concern to us, because it's not only about yourselves as an operator, it is about the children, it is about the working parent, but most importantly, it is about the community where you're located within. So from the city side, from Team Cape Town side, our message is simple. We want to become a more enabling government. This does not mean lowering our standards. It does not mean compromising on safety, land use and building safety, fire compliance, health requirements, traffic considerations, and basic services. All of that still matters. But an enabling environment ensures that government understands that regulation must be accompanied by guidance. Compliance must be accompanied by support, and policy must be shaped by what is actually happening on the ground. And that has been the central thinking behind the ECD task team. The task team was established because we recognized that ECD challenges do not sit only in one department. And as Yushra mentioned, it's now fully integrated. They cut across planning, building development, fire, health, transport, community practices, community services, and provincial and national systems. Because for an ECD practitioner, however, those internal government divisions do not matter. They experience it, we know that you do, you experience it as one big complex system. And if you're part of that system and anything that's not clear, it's something that's delaying your progress. It becomes unaffordable. It becomes difficult to access. Then the whole pathway to compliance outcomes are blocked. And we don't want that. And this is why the city initiated these 2 ECD indabas. We had 2 last year, and our next one is, of course, in 2 weeks' time. So if the save the date has not reached you yet, please be informed. It's Friday the 29th, is it? And Saturday the 30th. Friday the 29th and Saturday the 30th at the council chamber again. So please, you're most welcome to join us again. But I think importantly, we recognize that we, as government, that we needed to hear directly from the practitioners, the NPOs, the sector experts, officials, and partners about what was not working, what was working, but most importantly, what reforms would make the biggest difference. And that listening has already resulted in real progress. And Yushra mentioned quite a few of those announcements early on. And so through the municipal planning bylaw and the related reforms, the city has already taken important steps to make the pathway to compliance clearer and more achievable. We've heard about the admin penalties that have been waived for those ECDs as per the map in vulnerable and informal areas. Application fees for land use submissions have been scrapped. But we do see 1 or 2 still creeping in where the local district is not necessarily applying its mind fully. So we also have some internal discussions there. Centers with 34 children or fewer are now permitted as a right in residential zones, provided, and this is important, you've seen all our communications say, provided you get the support of your neighbor. That's the shortcut that we are offering you, but most certainly still need support. And of course, ECDs, and this was not mentioned here in Yushra's presentation, but ECDs, if you're operating within a city facility, you can then, if we dispose of it, you can purchase that at 10% of the market value. And I've been fighting tooth and nail to get it to 0, but I was told it's unlawful. But even the mayor asked his legal team to look into that. So how do we dispose of it at 0 cost? But 10% is as low as the current municipal asset transfer regulations allow us to go. And the city's development charges policy now includes relief options for qualifying ECDs. And as you should have mentioned for the infrastructure that is much, much, much needed. So these are not small administrative tweaks. They are practical reforms designed to remove those barriers, to unlock compliance, and to support the support that you've been asking for and doing, because you are doing very, very important critical work in your communities. But we also know that the policy reform on paper must translate into practical support on the ground. And this is why the city is also putting together a local planning support team. That entire team has been announced. They're focusing on affordable rental housing in the map as approved by council, but they will now also be able to assist yourselves with your planning queries. Every Thursday across all of our 8 planning districts, there's a team dedicated to serve your needs, to clarify and demystify the planning speak in the jargon, and to speak in plain and simple English so we all understand it, because it's important. I think it's really, really important as part of that pathway to compliance. Because compliance cannot simply be demanded. It must be made achievable. And while today we celebrate the progress already made, as Yushra mentioned, the work is not done yet. There are further reforms we are still pushing. We are looking at extending exemptions for ECDs in vulnerable areas to children, to operators with more than 34 children. That's the next big one that we are wanting to do. And we are reviewing how the zoning can become more enabling, especially for centers in vulnerable communities where early learning spaces are most needed. And this is why the city will soon host, as I've mentioned earlier on, another Indaba, because it's not a once-off conversation. If we are serious about reform, then listening must be ongoing, partnerships must be ongoing, and accountability must be ongoing. The next Indaba will allow us to take stock of the progress made, deepen the conversation on removing those barriers and what still remains, and continue building a shared pathway between government, yourselves as practitioners, civil society, and the wider ECD sector. This is how reform should work. Not government on one side and the sector on the other side, but all of us in one room around one table asking this question. What is the best that we should be in terms of the best interest of the child, and what must change in the system, and what is required to make it possible? That is why partnerships matter, and that is why we as the regulator, as the City of Cape Town, we cannot do it alone. And so today, as this learning brief is launched, I want to say that the city receives the work in the spirit in which it's intended, not as criticism. I did not hear that today, but also that we also learn as we go along. But as advocacy that strengthens the public service. That's the way we receive this brief here this morning. As evidence that helps us govern better, as partnerships that helps us move further and faster, and as a reminder that behind every regulation, every application, every single checklist, every policy process, there's a child. There is a child. That child does not understand municipal planning. That child does not understand intergovernmental mandates. That child does not understand why adults cannot get the system to work. The child simply needs us as a collective to get it right. And as part of the City of Cape Town and Team Cape Town, we are committed to being a big contributor towards that solution. We are committed to becoming more enabling. We are committed to working with CECD and the broader ECD sector to remove barriers where we can, to push reform where we must, and to keep safety, dignity, and the development of children at the center of this work. That commitment is also something that we are acutely aware of and remind ourselves often, and it should be strengthened, and it is currently being strengthened through grant funding that we have received, the KfW grant funding, and of course our partners, the DG Murray Trust, are also present here today. This partnership and the grant funding we've received helps us move from reform to practical implementation. And so once we put the reforms in place, we must also help centers meet the required standards through technical guidance, building related support and improvements linked to safety, linked to sanitation, environmental health, but most importantly, registration readiness. And so this is where reform becomes real, working alongside ECD practitioners so that compliance is not only required, but it's genuinely achievable. Let me close by thanking CECD again for this learning brief and for the role that you continue to play. I wish you good luck on your national tour. And if you need any assistance to mobilize colleagues in the other spheres of government or municipalities, please let us know. We know that there are 257 municipalities across the country. It's a lot of work that needs to be done. So thank you also to yourselves, to every single practitioner in this room who continues to serve children under difficult circumstances. And thank you to everyone who understands that building a better city does not only begin with roads, buildings, and infrastructure. It begins with our children. And when we get ECD right, we give Cape Town's children a stronger start, our families a stronger support structure, and ultimately our city that we also love, our beautiful city of Cape Town, we give it a stronger future. Thank you so much.
We just want to formally hand the learning brief over to you to say thank you. You have another one now. And just to say that we are very fortunate in the city of Cape Town to have local government that not only supports the ECD sector, but has really shown up, rolled up your sleeves and become a partner in this work. And that commitment means everything. So thank you so much to you and to everybody else. Okay, everybody, we're going to be moving on to the Q&A session now. But can everybody stand up? We've been sitting for a long time, and everybody who's watching virtually, let's stand up, do a tall stretch up into the air, stretch, 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 and go down. Touch your toes if you can, touch your toes to the left, to the right. Okay, let's sit down. Okay, we're just doing a quick shuffle of the stage. So I would like to welcome up to the stage for the Q&A section, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Yusra will also be back on stage with us. And we have Sarah Atmore, who is CECD's infrastructure manager, and as you heard, has also played a key and pivotal role in this work. Okay, can pass on to, maybe give to Yusra. Just to say, we're obviously taking questions from the room as well as to everybody who's watching us online. So please pop your questions into the comment section and those will get sent through to me so we can also ask that to the panels as part of the Q&A section. Just to say, we are trying to get through as many questions as we can. We are aware it's quite technical work, and so there might also be technical questions. So to that end, please be as concise as you can with your questions. The same goes to the panel for your answers, to try be as concise as is possible. And yeah, we'll get going from there. Okay, do we have any questions from inside of the room? I will be doing the run around. Here we go.
Hi, thank you very much to the panelists. My name is Amanda Edwards. I'm from the DG Murray Trust and representing the KFW Fund here as well. It is an incredible honor to see this kind of work coming up at a very critical time for ECD, not just in the city, but in the country. I think there is a moment where good evidence is coming into contact with political will, which is coming into contact with national funding that can be unlocked to the benefit of the children, the city, and the future. And I think that's really, really exciting. The question I have for the team is, has there been any work done on integrating a formalized ECD policy or approach into things like the integrated development plan and local budgets? Knowing that we have to get the rubber to hit the road sustainably, those pieces of work also need to happen as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. So I think I'm going to first ask, Deputy Mayor Andrews, if you can answer that question.
No, I think not, or rather not yet. I think it's important that we do, especially if you're looking at the collective response to the sector. We need to ensure that our respective frameworks respond to it as well, our budgets as well. We have a budget steering committee when every department comes with hand in cap and saying, this is what we want to do, that it's aligned with the strategic objective. So my response to you, Amanda, is not yet, but I would love to see going forward how we do zoom into those areas, particularly with the areas that we are about to identify as part of the funding. How do we then ensure that the other departments are also allocating budgets there, whether it's improved road infrastructure, additional public open spaces, whether it looks at waste, how do we repurpose or rethink our relationship with waste and look at the public open space not as a dumping hotspot, but actually how do we utilize that as part of the curriculum for the educate and also the broader community, whether it be additional street lighting, is it currently sufficient? Is our waste collection frequency also sufficient? So all of that most certainly is important. So my response is not yet, but most certainly it is our absolute intention we actually get that going, because there is a unit in the city that looks at all of our strategies and saying, how does it align? Because if we go in different directions, what is the impact that we are having? But if we aligned it as a force multiplier, the impact, especially if we look at the social vulnerability index, the impact can be so much greater. So not yet, but definitely something as part of our advocacy agenda we shouldn't lose sight of.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, we're just checking that our live stream. Thank you, Deb. Does anybody, Yusra, do you want to add anything before we move on?
Sure, maybe to add to that exact point. So in terms of the ECD task team and working with the City of Cape Town, we really were looking at changing the system, so changing the laws and the regulations and the processes. But you are very right. The system needs to change, but you also need funding and resources to uplift the centers to meet the standards of this reform. So it is a very good idea to also be looking at the IDP of the City of Cape Town, which speaks to the budget, to make sure that once the system is streamlined, money actually flows in to uplift those centers.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take a question now from online before we come back to the room. Yusra, this one's going to be to you. I know you did speak about it, but it's about the municipal compliance steps. Could your colleague kindly tell us what the municipal compliance steps are? She stated land use first, then building plans, etc. I'm trying to gauge the amount of steps. So maybe just to recap that again.
Yes, sure. So in the City of Cape Town, there are 4 municipal compliance steps that you need to complete as an ECD center, and you complete it in a specific order. The first one is to make sure you have land use approval in place. So either correct zoning or asking permission from the City of Cape Town to operate as an ECD center on your property. After you have your land use approval in place, you then need to get an approved building plan indicating the ECD center on your building plan. Thereafter, you get your fire clearance, and then finally your health clearance.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anybody else on the panel wants to add to that. Sarah?
I think maybe just one thing, a lot of ECD centers will often point out that they are battling with fire or they're battling to get their health clearance, but it's because those initial steps haven't been met. And then there's those 4 steps, but there's also in between, maybe you've got an approved building plan, but then also ensuring that the facility matches that before getting the fire clearance. So while there's 4 steps, is that they can be quite complex. And it's not always as easy as jumping from one to the next, but we're working on that.
Thank you. Any questions from inside? Oh, we'll start here.
Hi. Thanks. My name is Mastura Sadan. Can I just commend the CECD for this work that you've done? I mean, I think it's a game changer because, we've all fought very hard for the money, and now we still have these local government challenges. And so, if we can overcome these hurdles, we can get the money. I know that, there are many poor children already who benefit, but the really poor children are still being left out of the system. So I'm keen to know how you want to take this to, for national government to understand this and for provincial government, other governments, not just the Western Cape. I'd be keen to know what your strategy is going to be. Thanks.
Thank you. Good question. Yusra?
That's an excellent question. And like we said earlier, the Department of Basic Education really is focusing on ECD. They are prioritizing it in their department. So they actually approached us. They heard about the work that the City of Cape Town is doing, and they had set up a red tape reduction unit because they realized from a South African national perspective, all the issues are really, or most of the issues lie at a municipal level. And they were looking to see where has there been reform, how can that reform be scaled or adapted? And so we engage with the Department of Basic Education regularly on the reforms, and we'll continue to do that. They can then, from a national government perspective, understand some version of solutions that can be rolled out, and I think that's very important. We are incredibly keen to be talking to SALGA, so if there's an opportunity to talk to the South African Local Government Association as well as COGTA, to think of how do you scale that across more municipalities from a body or an association that represents municipalities, essentially. So to answer your question, we've been approached by national government, and we are looking to work with SALGA and COGTA to expand.
Thank you. I saw that there we go, a hand at the back.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Fundiswa Molefe from Asupol Community Trust, based in KwaZulu-Natal. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for this advocacy call session. We have learned a lot that we will take back to our provinces. And then secondly, last week we attended the Trilogue conference in Sentin, where there was more than 200 corporate social investment. And there was a question that was asked in that room that why most of the corporate social investment like to invest in Western Cape. I do have the question, I do have the answer today, and I would like to say to our Honorable Deputy Mayor, what you are doing in support of the Early Childhood Development Center is also attracting most of the investors to this province. And because most of them want to invest where there is compliance. Thank you so much.
I mean, thank you for the comment and the compliment. We don't want to monopolize good governance in the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape. We just want to fulfill the obligations of the office that we hold, and to understand that there are contexts and the context matters, and how do we help. I think that is really important, because if all the other cities function the way they should, or the provinces, we want people to invest there as well. I mean, that's important. That's the outcome that I want to achieve as well. So, and I'm glad that the roadshow and the collaboration with the National Department of Basic Education has been announced, because that's important. And we need to find champions there in those cities and in those provinces. It's the only way it's going to work. The public sector gods have aligned here in this case. It's just, and now it's even further with the GNU. Now you have a national minister who's also keen in saying, hey, every year we announce the grade 12 results. Everyone, we clap and we celebrate, but we need to locate interventions in the foundation phase. And that's why there's a focus there. Because if we don't do that, these outcomes will not improve. So if we can get that right, then these outcomes as a consequence will improve. So thank you for the compliment. Our absolute desire is that the other cities in the province look at this document. There we go. Look at this learning brief and the lessons learned, and they institutionalize this within their sphere of government as well.
Thank you. Okay, before we get to the gentleman, and then Tatiana will come to you, we have an online question, and then we'll come back to in person. The online question is building plans. Any work around this for ECD centers without approved building plans, as they operate on city land and without title deeds? Yusra, do you want to start? Sarah, will you start for us?
Yeah, there is one of the work streams is focusing on ECD centers on city-owned property. I think they've identified 289 centers, some of which the property or the infrastructure was built by the city, and in other cases it was vacant land and the ECD center is built. And they've really, it's a massive task which we are pushing with the city. Each and every meeting we have, I think we're a bit of a thorn in their side to say what's happening. Where are they? And they are making progress. I think there needs to be maybe a better system for responding quickly to the queries that come up. Because there's 289, it's a big task to manage. So that's something that maybe the city can look at. And I know they are developing a dashboard of how do they track compliance on city-owned properties. But that's something that we could probably strengthen the communication around that and response times.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll come.
So
Deputy
I
Mayor,
just-
do you want to
yeah,
add
yeah,
in
just
before we
add-
go to the
add to
next
that.
question?
So Sarah's right, but also the one point about the deed. So if you don't have deed, it's impossible for us to assist you. You need to be the owner of the property, and I think something that we're really trying to get across the line with a lot more efficiency would be the finalization of the lease application process, particularly with that they being community services and the department. Work collaboratively with the city's property transactions department where they have more capacity. And those 300, approximately the number changes when we speak to, but I just use the word approximately 300 centers. Those are the ones we're also targeting to dispose of as well at 10%. And if there's any other non-compliance, that's required, we're also trying to see how we get the building up to code. But without deed, we can't help you. If you don't own the property and the city's the landlord, we can give you a power of attorney to submit the building plan applications. But it is not as efficient as we would like it to be.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Firstly, I want to say to all the role players that makes events like this possible. That's really greatly appreciated. And also thank you to our deputy mayor. The last time I met the sir, I called him the mayor. You're really moving, you're really doing things. We can see it. We appreciate you, sir. My question, so it's a bit to a negative side, but I think the last spokesperson tapped into that. I'm here with my wife, that's a ECD, is the owner. And the process, she's now in the last year, the 5th year of, that she was awarded to run a crest from the property. So we tick off all the boxes, as you mentioned just now, being the owner and all of that. And now we're at the point now where plans have been submitted for how many times it's now really again submitted. And again, now it's in the stage now where they now scrutinize and all of this. My question is there no way this process can be speeded? Because it really is still from where you are sitting, sir, to the lower level of city officials. There's a lot of delays, and it's very, very frustrating. And that's why I say the last spokesperson actually tapped into that. You don't want to get to that stage where you have to fight with city officials, go past certain officials and declare and go directly to your office. But somehow the process must be, like I say, we're now year number 5. It's really basically maybe another 4 or 5 months. Then her 5-year term will be over. And she's ticked off all the boxes. Some of the people know her story, and his day came. It's been a very hard-fought battle for her. And I'm a concerned husband. I support her in her business. And the community she serves, the kids she serves, I mean, it's very frustrating. There must be a way that this can be speeded. It's just too slow.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure, Deputy Mayor, if you want to start.
I definitely would love to start. So, I think for the application process generally is complex. And whenever I hear a concern framed in that manner and you do a deep dive, there's always, the case ID is important. And what you get the response from the department is that the delays are either on the city side and I'm commenting generally now, or it's on the applicant side. And you find that sometimes the application is incomplete or the quality of the application has potential to delay the application. But also the departments, when they comment on the application, they're also inconsistent with the comments as well. So what we've done now is we're busy with our business improvement process. It's called the DMOP, Development Management Optimization Process. And part of our 46 work streams that we have there's a commenting protocol. It's just to refresh that and saying, how do the departments understand all applicable legislation, look at the specific context, and then understand that the aid is exempted. So why are you holding it back? Because they don't need to pay an admin penalty. Or if it triggers a land use departure application, then are you aware of that? Because in what we've picked up, that often when the application triggers a land use departure, the professional person is not truthful with the applicant, then they say to you, no, it's the fault at council. But that's not the response. What specifically is the problem with council? And I can guarantee you that if we get the case ID number, then of course you'll get all the details of why there are delays. Is it in the system? Where is the current, where the application is currently? If it's outside of the system, what inputs do you need to give in, respond to? And something that we want to fix, like if we all our departments as part of our circulating protocol, that you see the application, you must give comment. And if the response from the applicant is responding to the initial concerns, then no other department must have a second bite at the cherry to now say, oh, but you forgot about this window here, or this screw here, or the truss is not at the right angle, where's your so all of that. So we're trying to get that culture right in the system as well, because then you lose your right to have further inputs on it as well, just so we have that sort of firmer commenting protocol in place, and so that your process ultimately is more efficient. But if I were to pull up the data in terms of how long the applications are generally within the system and outside the system, you will think that I'm lying. And we are not squeaky clean as the city of Cape Town, but the applicant is also not squeaky clean, and the professional person is not always truthful. And that's what we've picked up. And I can give you lots of examples where operators were misled by professional people, and then they wait, and then I have to go on radio and to represent the city and like, nee man, jy het die pot misgesit hierso. Why are you lying to the applicant? And so that's why it's important that we understand the specifics and that we actually try and help the applicant. And that's why that local planning support department that we've established is so important, because they can identify the barriers and inform you what to do to mitigate, but so that it's more understandable and the process is a lot smoother. And they are there every single Thursday across all our 8 districts, and they have time. Not everyone know that they're there. That's why I use every platform to inform people that they are there.
Thank you. I don't know if Yusra, if anybody wants to add. No. Okay. Tatiana, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tatiana. I'm from an organization called the Equality Collective, and I'm part of a national law reform movement called Real Reform for ECD. I wanted to first say congratulations on such a fantastic event and such a fantastic learning brief. Yusra, it's so inspiring to hear about the work you and the CECD team have done, especially the changes to the municipal planning bylaw. What a win. And Deputy Mayor, it was perhaps even more inspiring to hear you talk with such conviction about removing barriers to compliance. It's fantastic stuff. I have 2 questions. The first one is, what's next in terms of removing barriers in the city of Cape Town? What are your top priorities now? And the second is, Yusra, you spoke a bit about collaborating with the National Department of Basic Education and with SALGA and COGTA, but I wondered if you could say something about opportunities for other civil society organizations across the country to collaborate with CECD to try and implement similar reforms, similar changes in other municipalities.
Yeah, I'll just have a quick go. So next would be the large scale ECDs in those areas. Those are areas that are socially vulnerable, so we can actually help them. And I don't have the data set now. I can't recall it offhand, but there's also a big need there within the map as approved by council. And I think just to emphasize the point again, that what you should have mentioned early on, the complete integration of all of these sort of outcomes within city departments, and the task team, they are there, they are attending. I think that's important. And as a consequence that the organizational culture changes, that we don't see the sector as the regulator, that we role that we fulfill, but we see it in the context that it should be seen, in that we are now being part of an ecosystem that has a direct impact on educational outcomes. That to me is important. And I'll share this final example with you. In about 12 years ago, when I attended my first roadshow with the ECD department, and the fire and safety official got up there and he said to us, they were called out to Hood Bay. There was a fire and the kids were evacuated safely. They did a check, and then in the back room, there were 2 children holding on to the burglar bars, and they were burnt alive in that room. And so the reality is we need to ensure that our spaces are safe. We need to ensure that the operators are fully capacitated in terms of what a fire drill looks like. And you need to know who to call. And you need to know in terms of how you need to have an emergency door, why that is important. So when you exit that you're rushed and all of that matters as well. So I think that to me is important. I remember that story vividly because I want to try and help prevent that. And so for me, the full integration of all of these outcomes within the organization is the one outcome. And the second one would be the large scale ECDs that we are targeting now, so we can offer the same sort of support as we do now currently for the small scale ECDs.
Thank you. Yeah, Yusra, if you can answer also the same two priorities and then the collaboration with CECD.
Yeah, sure, Tatiana. So in addition to what the Deputy Mayor said, as mentioned in the presentation, we really are focusing on informal settlements now. That's really crucial for us to find a fair, effective, practical pathway to compliance for ECD centres in informal settlements to get their land use approval in place and to get their building plan approval in place. In terms of collaborating with other civil society organizations, I'm so thrilled that you asked that, because that's exactly what we have to do and need to do and should do. We can't do it all. We aren't in all the municipalities, but we are really hoping we can partner with ECD nonprofit organizations deeply rooted in those communities that have connections to ECD centers, know those issues, and help them approach the municipality in their area, help them for whatever they need. So do they need legal expertise? Do they need research? Do they need technical expertise? We won't assume that they don't have what they need. They might have more than what we currently have. But just in terms of a model that can be replicated, we want to assist where we can. And we as CECD, we are operating in other provinces as well. So we currently operate in parts of the Eastern Cape as well as the Northern Cape. So where we have those relationships with those mayors, we are hoping to push forward in that way. But similarly to the fact that Asupol is here all the way, they flew in, they're in the city of Tshwane, and they were an ECD MPO that we spoke to around the advocacy. And they've been inspired to want to approach the city of Tshwane mayor and see what can be done there.
Thank you. Before we go to another in-person question, I'm just going to take one from online. This one is from Warren from Breadline Africa. Does the city see a ring-fenced budget item, perhaps in the IDP, going forward that focuses on ECD infrastructure, hoping to close the cycle of non-compliance due to unsafe centres?
So it would be an unlawful request because we can't spend public money on private properties. What we can do, especially now with the grant funding we've received, we have the flexibility to now identify within once we confirm the actual area, privately owned ECDs. They can actually assist them so that they are up to code and so they can get their land use in place and the building plan approvals and the like. But we can't use public funds to assist a private property because you're a private entity. Unfortunately not. We're very excited about the DG Murray Trust and the KFW grant. I think there, and I hope after the first phase or the first year, we'll also give an update to the sector to see the reforms that we've been advocating for and now how that translated to practical implementation going forward. So sadly, the answer is no. But I want to comment on the point that was raised earlier about corporate South Africa. If we can have these shovel-ready projects for corporate South Africa, we can go knock on their door and say, here's an opportunity for you. If you're serious about contributing towards that shared future, here's a shovel-ready project for you. And we can identify a center within close proximity of your business. So you can also tick that box if it's a requirement. But we have these projects for you. And there, I think, is an opportunity for us as well. But they won't come on board if you're not compliant. In terms of as an entity, but also if you don't have your registered documents, you need to have audited financials and all of that as well. So that's also the level of assistance I would love us to get to as a collective to ensure that we capacitate the operators in a way that they are fully compliant and confident to approach business as well. So I think that's sadly the answer is no, but there are many ways to kill a cat.
I do love cats, if you may. I'm just like, no, joking.
I don't know what to replace it with, though.
Good morning to everyone and good morning to you, Mayor. My name is Sonia. I'm coming from Kailicha. Mayor, as you're speaking here, I'm listening, but on the other side, my heart is broken. I just want to tell you that what can we do? We're having a problem there in Kailicha. It's been a long time. We try our best. We go to sub-consultant, write a letter, emails, but they don't come back. Maybe for arrangement of the meeting. We're having a problem of the councillor. He don't tell us about our budget as centers. And it's been a long time. We go to his office. He promised to meet with us, but he don't do anything. So we don't know what he's doing with our budget of the centers, the money of the centers in our wards. So what can we do about that? Yes, we know their terms is ending. Maybe we'll change him. We don't know. Only God knows. So I want to ask, the last question is that, do you, Mayor, call the councillors maybe twice a year and ask them what did they do to the budget of the center and show you the proof pictures of the principals? What did they do? Because we don't know. We don't know what he's doing with our budget. And even Monday, we were crying to him, as telling that our creatures destroyed by that wind. He just decided to help the community. He didn't come to the centers. So what are we going to do? Like, can you give us advice which step we can take furthermore? Thank you.
So let me start with the advice. And so any councillor who is not convening their quarterly report back meetings, or there are any concerns, that councillor must be reported to the Speaker of Council. The Speaker would investigate and, of course, confirm what that outcome is. Even myself as a Deputy Mayor, you're most welcome to report me to the Speaker of Council. Hopefully you won't, but the option is there. That's the procedure. But the budget, so there are no budgets. So we have 116 wards in the city of Cape Town. Each ward has a ward budget of 1 million rand per budget. So I assume you're referring to the ward budget, but there's no set allocation in a ward budget for ECDs. What you do find, based on the consultation the ward councillor has with the sector or the broader community, projects are identified in that way. And sometimes there's a focus on ECDs. And then what we can do as councillors, we can then say to Community Arts and Culture Development Department, we would like to allocate X amount for educational resources. So we can't, as I mentioned, invest in infrastructure, but we can invest in educational resources and we can give those resources to you. And that's what most councillors do. Along the same lines as we do for safety, we allocate radios and bibs and torches and all those other things to the safety structure as a token of our appreciation for the work that they do voluntary, but also for you as an operator for the work that you do. And I know sometimes it could also be voluntary because the parents don't pay, right? So technically it is voluntary. But there's no set budget for the sector within a ward budget. The information that you seek, it's available on the city's website. Who is the manager? There's Alderman Satonga. Is he the manager? So the officials at that sub-council should be able to supply the information to you. And if they don't, please let us know. But it's on the city's website. You can just click the councillor's name. And maybe that's also something as an action item. We'll see if we can send it through. So there's a link. You click the councillor's name. And then the ward comes up. You click on the ward. The budget comes up there. It tells you who are the members of the ward committee. It tells you which committees your councillor, at which meetings he's an official member. All of that lives there. It tells you also where your local sub-council is. It also tells you the managers of that sub-council, how you can register as a community-based organization. So you get all the information filtering through. But the information is there, but I think it's the access that's the issue. That's the issue here. And even though there may be some, there's a domestic dispute between yourself and the ward councillor, there's also a department, Community Arts and Culture Development Department, who are across all 4 service delivery nodes, Area South, East, North, and Central, and you are in Area East in Kailicha. They also provide services, and you can liaise directly with them saying, what are you doing for us as a forum? Is there a forum that you've established? If not, can we establish one? Just last week, we established one in our sub-council, because something that I'm pushing aggressively for, that each one of our sub-structures of council, the sub-council, that they have an ECD forum, because the information, the stuff that we spoke about here, it's not reaching the people. And I'm trying to understand, how do we reach the people? Do we go on WhatsApp? Do we go on the local radio station, print media, social media? So we use all the platforms. But still, when I attend engagement like this and I ask questions, are you getting information? No. So it's something that I'm really worried about, because we stand here behind podiums and we have these beautiful speeches and what we have done and give ourselves a pat on the back. But the community of practice don't know about this, the value, the support that we are offering. So I'm appealing to all of us here to ensure that we establish forums in our sub-councils, that there's a direct link with the sub-council manager, and that all of those centers are registered as community-based organizations. You don't need to be a registered NPO. You just need to be an entity, an AGM and a constitution. 2 pages, you complete your information, and then of course you're registered on the database. But yeah, that's unfortunately the best advice I can give you with the councillor, and the budget information is available.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a quick question online. Deputy Mayor, I'm afraid you are in the firing line today a little bit, but we thank you for being here. This is a question for you from Elizabeth van Beek online. You mentioned changing official culture and that some professionals lie to applicants. Why is that? Can you explain the culture underlying these attitudes and choices?
Sure. I'm going to speculate. And because most of these professionals, they work on billable hours. So the more work they do, of course, the more they get paid. And sometimes I also pick up that sometimes the professional is also not aware of certain amendments to the legislation, and that's why the application, the quality of the application, is not what it should be. One example I'll share with you. I wanted to build extend my garage, and the architect did not know that I'm the deputy mayor and this is my portfolio. And he said to me, "No, it's council's to blame." And what he didn't tell me was that the extension of my garage now is outside of the building envelope. It triggers a departure from the zoning scheme. Now you add a minimum of 12 to 18 months on the application process. He didn't say, I knew that, but he didn't tell me that. So sometimes they're not truthful. Sometimes they're not aware of the applicable legislation. And also in some scenarios, we find that it's all about the billable hours. But I don't see the value in that, because I think sometimes they extort the people. I mean, there's one, I'll share an example. I think you guys are also involved in the Otters Creek matter. I mean, that in itself, what I've picked up there, again, going on the radio, responding to this particular notice we served. And I said to Ms. Yumna, how can we help you get across the line? And of course, CECD is involved. We're also trying to get involved from a land use perspective. But sometimes the professional person is misleading the applicant. And my 3 scenarios, I'm speculating, but I'm sure there are many other reasons that I may not be aware of.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody wants to add.
I don't know if we want to.
Yeah.
Greg, would you want to offer a response to that? Have I covered it? Okay. Oh, the Charles, yeah.
Charles? Wait, Charles, just so that online can hear you.
Okay. Charles Ritman, Office of a Deputy Mayor. I think just maybe to add what the Deputy Mayor is saying, from our own experience, what we have seen, that particularly within vulnerable communities, there are certain people who call themselves consultants or professionals, but they are exploiting the lack of knowledge of our communities. We have argued at one stage that we would like to develop a list, a blacklisting people. Because there are some people really, and I can mention names, but I won't mention names here. But they are exploiting our people. They are exploiting our people, and that's why we sometimes, and I think very specifically to this sector and the ARF sector, we are arguing that we need to develop service providers to the sector which we can accredit it. So we're not saying that we won't get you onto that list, but what we wanted to say that if you're on that list, the person who are making use of your services will be aware that you're
Yes.
able to provide a credible service. Or what the city, and I think I don't need, what the city would like to see is that and in particular, our vulnerable communities, that we provide our vulnerable communities with the best services we can. Sorry, Alderman, if I could have just add that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Much appreciated. Do we have any more questions from the in-person? Oh, Amanda.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Mbali, and my question, maybe just a comment, is well done today for the work that we've done, my colleagues, but also I think I've always said this to Yusra, that I obviously she mentioned that I work in the community and we get to hear about these things every day. And I've got so many questions or comments, but also I think it is very important that I think the Deputy Mayor also mentioned briefly now that it is important that the work that we do, that is incredible, that is sitting in these books. It's not just going to be sitting in these books, and also for people who can access these books or these events in these locations that we're in. The information or the work that we do, it really does need to go to the people that who need it the most. I know people are here working in the sector and we are grappling to try to find solutions for the problems. But what is the, I'm trying to see, what is the meaning or what's the point if we are going to be sitting here and sometimes speaking in languages that the people that we're doing this work for can't even understand? I've always said this with my team, and I know that we're big advocates of making sure that the information is going to the ground. And I think when we do these things, I think I mentioned this when we had the ECD in Daba as well at the Civic Center. I was like, yes, maybe it's a big venue, but it's fenced and it's far from the people that we are trying to do this work for. I'm going to talk like this, like I'm someone from the outside. I work for CECD as well, and I've watched my colleagues, and also being the part of the task team, I've seen politicians as humans after working with them and sitting with them and listening to them. Yusra also mentioned that they would also try to help us find loopholes in order to find solutions. Because as someone who works here and I listen to those conversations, but I also happen to be someone who also lives in these locations with the people that we are talking about. And those very same people we're trying to find solutions for, they're not here. And I think when we're doing this incredible work, it really needs to go and be translated in language or simpler terms for people that we are trying to do this work for to understand. Because as much Yusra did mention that I go to forums and I talk to people, and I remember when we started to go to forums and we were trying to understand, because Eric said, okay, now we have this unit, the advocacy unit, what are we going to do? We didn't know what we wanted to do. We only knew that there was a problem because we've got an infrastructure manager who deals with frustrated principals every day. And we started going to forums as well. And we listened, and I was like, I have all this information. We have all these reports. Nyanga, Lower Cross Road, or Kailicha, even sometimes Clement, and they have the same solutions. And I think that we were not going to be able to have this conversation right now, that learning brief in that book, if we were not able, if we didn't go and say, okay, we're trying to do this work, but we want to understand your problems. And yeah, we collected the information, because I said to my team, I was like, I go to these forums and I hear about these problems. And we don't have the solutions because we don't have $1 billion sitting in our bank account to fix a leaking roof or help a principal who was scammed by an architect. But also, I think we owe it to ourselves to have these people that we're doing this work for in the same rooms, in locations that they can easily access, so that they can see that indeed this Cape Town is working for them, this city works for them, because they are not here. And sometimes I go to these places again and they're like, you again. And if you're gonna come wearing your CECD t-shirt, they're gonna be like, oh, Eric's people are here, and there's I think there's an automatic realization that there's gonna be answers or solution, or my architect fees are gonna be covered or whatever. But then now we're sitting here speaking in English, number one, and in a fancy building in Woodstock, and the people that we're doing this work for, cream of the crop are here because we did work in cases with them and we personally invited them. But most people are sitting there in Kailicho or Nyanga East or Krafontein, they are not here. So I want us, the work that we have done for the past 4 years, it needs to be translated in a language and in spaces that these people that we're doing this work for can hear and understand. Because sometimes I'll go to forums and they'll be like, Amanda, we know that you're not here to fix my leaking roof or help me with my registration process, but the fact that we know that you're doing the work and you are here to explain it in a language and in a manner that makes me understand, even though the situation is not fixed yet, but I know the work is being done. But also we are a very few team and I can't be everywhere in Cape Town. And I think for you, Deputy Mayor, we need, as a City of Cape Town, government and CECD and other amazing organizations that are sitting in this room, we really need to come together because for some reason I thought CECD was the greatest in the world. And I still think we do incredible work, but also going to other meetings and meeting other organizations, I realized
much
that there
more to
are
do.
incredible organizations who are doing farm work, but they need support and they need to be included in such spaces. And as much as I am proud of the work that we do, at some point I do feel like we are gatekeepers of the information. And I think if you are going to do such work, other organizations need to be taught the roles. And I'm happy that we have that now and we can be able to translate it and share it with other organizations. So now I think the work has been done for the past 4 years. We need other people in the room to sit down because as much as we have an incredible Yusra and a Sarah Atmore and other people in our team, but we need more. And there are other organizations who are doing incredible work in this city. And I think we need to get them in the room and not just speak in our fancy language and spaces, but we need people who are actually doing the work in the room as well. Again, thank you so much for the work that we've done in the past 4 years. I don't know how long I think that you are politicians. I think you're humans who are trying to find solutions, but I think you can do more. People don't know what you're doing, and I think you can do better to really show people of Cape Town that you are working and you are really trying to find loopholes to find solutions for them.
Thank you
And
so
also
much.
to Yusra, I'm sorry, I sound like a TED talk, but Yusra, you've done an incredible work. And I always say to her, oh my God, I'm getting emotional, that you have the brains for this work, but also a heart. And it is incredible hard to find that. You find cutthroat people who are just doing the work because they find a gap in the market. Okay, I can do this because it's gonna get me working and we're going to do all these things, but you also have the heart and the brains and I can see sometimes you get frustrated that you wanna go take money somewhere and just fix all these problems. And also you, Sarah, also have seen you working very hard and I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you to remind us of where we are and also for the call to get this out into places where people are at. I don't know if anybody wants to comment. Deputy Mayor?
Quickly. So not just applicable in this context, Amanda, but I think also the Indaba, we've also received quite a few calls to decentralize that. So one of the things that we are now talking with community arts and culture development for them to go into the districts and have the same conversation and decentralize it there as well. So they have recently we had the roadshow now, but there's another, quite a few series of engagements that they will be embarking on as well. And so that we can actually unpack it at a local level, because not everyone is by means to trek all the way through to town on a Saturday and a Friday as well. And maybe also going forward, we must then, Sarah and Yushra, find a way, how do we, as part of that roadshow, how do we have this document presented there? Or even if it's is this the summarized version? No, this is the actual, but a summarized version in all 3 languages as well. I think that is really important. I know that you guys have, you have podcasts, do you? No? Not yet.
We do?
We do.
We
Have
do?
some. Yeah.
I can help with that.
there you go.
I have that resource available, and it's mobile. You can chat to me about that. But agreed completely with Amanda.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I think a few of the comments and questions have raised the importance of communicating the work. There's been a hell of a lot done. I don't think any of us will sit here and say we finished. There's a lot still to do, and it sometimes seems almost insurmountable. But you've highlighted some good points. How do we get the stuff out? ECD centers are getting taken for a ride by professionals, architects who are sometimes misguiding them. So how do we, one, communicate the improvements, and two, create a space where these improvements can actually, take centers somewhere? The bylaws has been changed. How many ECD centers are picking up on that to actually move forward in their compliance journey? So looking at ways that as a task team, as a city, as role players in the sector, how do we support to piggyback on the work that's been done, but then to actually support and push centers forward? There's a hell of a lot more still to do. I wish we had more time and more people.
Thank you. Okay, is there one last question? Okay, so I'm going to ask just two very brief questions from online, and then we will wrap up the Q&A session. Yusra, this is to you. Who do we engage at CECD to partner and roll out in other municipalities?
Me, Yusra Ehrenreich, the Advocacy and Social Justice Manager. I welcome all and everyone.
Deputy Mayor, a very specific question for you. I know you have spoken about it, but for ECD centers that are currently struggling with municipality land use applications, etc., do you have people on the ground that we can contact personally for help? Any contact details?
Yes, we do. There's an email address. I'm going to look over to Charles just to remind me what that email address. If not, we'll just circulate it to your participants list. Because we've also picked up that they are knocking on all these doors, and the doors are not the correct doors. So there's one email address and one contact person within Community Arts and Culture Development that can respond to your lease queries. That's the one response. The second response would be that we also want to see we have a database, that it's important that they receive confirmation that they are on that database, because sometimes we don't know if it's our facility and if there's a lease in place. And so we also stumble, oh, this is ours. Can we fix this and regularize this? So get the email address. We'll send it to you have it, Greg? Oh, gregory.ubad@capetown.gov.za. Okay, is that the one? There we go. gregory.ubad@capetown.gov.za. That's the email address. I thought it was a CAD email address, be that as it may. And just to ensure that you are on the actual list that we need to resolve now with all those leases.
Thank you. And what we'll maybe do is circulate that information, if we can, to everybody who's attending. Thank you. We're going to wrap up now. Can I ask just a last 30-second from everybody, last final words, and then we'll do the thank yous in closing.
From my side, I think just one remark. Let us not be desensitized to what we're exposed to on a daily. And that environment not live within inside of us. Whether it's organizational culture, whether it's trying to get a building plan approved in informal settlement, or you're just frustrated that you're not moving anywhere. Keep on forging ahead, because together we definitely as a collective we will reach the intended destination to ensure that the 1,900 and somewhat non-compliant ECDs, that number is reduced over time.
Thank you.
I think to echo what you said, that number, the 2,620 centers, I think it is conceivable that every single one of those centers within the city of Cape Town could become fully compliant. And I don't think, we're not going to rest, and we're not going to stop being the thorn in the city's side and also the city's partner until such a time that those centers are all compliant. And there's a lot of talk about bronze and silver, but at the end of the day, every single child deserves a gold standard, fully compliant, safe, and inspiring environment. So yeah, as tough and as slow as it can be, I think we just keep pushing until we achieve that.
Yes, and then just to add on to all of that is we are here to expand and to scale. We need to go to other municipalities. Let us not rest with that. We are not afraid of hard work. Please join us. Let's do this together. It is possible. We are incredibly hopeful. We can change systems to improve the lives of children.
Thank you. unless you want to stay on the stage and closing, which you are also welcome to do. Just turn it off, maybe. Okay, we are pretty much almost on time. So last, just to do the very quick thank yous. And firstly, say thank you to everybody who was part of the Q&A session. Much appreciated. Firstly, a thank you to Inya Taylor and to Jacques for hosting us, providing tech support. We really do appreciate it. A big thank you to the City of Cape Town, to the Mayor, to Charles, to Gregory, and to all of your officials for being partners in this work with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to Ikamva Labantu for joining us on the task team as social partners and for your invaluable knowledge around informal settlements. And a very special thank you to all of our walk-in cases. They are here, to all of our trial centers. Thank you to you, because your experience really helped us to kind of shape our advocacy work and kind of led the way for what needed to be done. So a big thank you to all of you. And just to say thank you to Van Veek and Associates for their legal support as part of this work, and to all the ECD MPOs and individuals who have been part of this and have contributed in some way to this work and to this learning brief. And then importantly, to say thank you to our funders. We have incredible funders who fund this work. It's sometimes difficult to fund advocacy-related work, but a big thank you to the ABAX Development Trust, the Jim Joel Fund, and the Oppenheimer Memorial Trust. And then just, a clap. And to say thank you to the CECD team that put this all together, Michaela, Claire, Najra, Yusra, everybody else who's been involved. Thank you. Events are always quite stressful, but they pulled it together and it's been a great event and a great hybrid event too. So thank you for that. And just my last words, and this is mostly to the CECD team. Thank you for showing up day after day with the determination this work demands. Advocacy is really a straight road, and we know there's still more to do, but the progress we are seeing tells us we are heading in the right direction. Ultimately, it is the young children who benefit from your perseverance, and that makes the steps of the journey worth it. Thank you so much. And with that, we are officially done. And please help yourself to refreshments at the back and some tea and coffee and mingle and enjoy yourselves. Thank you so much for being here.
I can press the wrong button. I know.